Welcome back to The Layman's Perspective, the show where, I changed my desk. What are you gonna do? Today, we're gonna be focusing on Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Episode 3. You already know the drill, okay? Spoilers ahead. All the spoilers that we're gonna talk about, they're all spoilers. I wash my hands of your wrath should I spoil something for you and you skipped past this warning. We definitely have a lot of things to talk about with this episode. It's a very Easter egg heavy episode, I've realized upon multiple rewatches, and we're going to start with the very quick scene at the beginning that displays to us Walker and Hoskins are lukewarm on the trail of Carly, who is, I guess, the primary antagonist for the show, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. We had a nice little commercial for the post-blip organization known as the GRC, the Global Repatriation Carnival? And the artificial warmth on display in this commercial, I believe, was meant to contract the grim reality of their camps that we see later on in the episode. We also get a quick scene with Walker as the new Cap, but we don't linger on the Star-Spangled Faker for that much longer because the show is more interested in delivering us as much Daniel Bruhl's Zemo as it can give us, and rightfully so, in my opinion, because I think he was doing a great job. After all, Deadpool is my favorite comic book superhero of all time. A character who is often regarded as the grandfather for the anti-hero phenotype. So I was happy to see Zemo slide from a one-dimensional villain to a slightly more complex anti-hero. His character acting was also lovely. You know, he was sharp-witted, verbose, provocative, arrogant, unpredictable. In summation, a character who contrasts quite nicely with Sam and Bucky. His first words to Buck in his little cell emphasize this cheekiness that he has, using the Winter Soldier activator words from Civil War to taunt a comparatively stoic Bucky to see if he can get a reaction out of him. We get a lot of callbacks to Civil War here, with Bucky telling Sam it's unlikely that he would talk to both of them, seeing as how Sam is an Avenger, something that Zemo still despises. In general, I think it's fair to assume that Zemo hates all heroes/superpowered individuals, a factor which likely led to Bucky to trust him in the first place, if only from the enemy of my enemy is my friend type capacity. We watch Zemo escape imprisonment, with Bucky's dialogue serving as a ruse, which I really like. Sam thinks he's being explained a future plan, when in fact, he's being told what's happened already. The breakout was a little rushed, but the show only has so much time to give us a lot, so I was willing to give them a pass with what in other properties might have been viewed as a sloppy breakout scene. We see that they're meeting in a garage holding an antique car collection owned by Zemo. Now, between this and the private jet scene, we learn that apparently Zemo is a filthy, stinking rich royal. That's a rather large retcon / departure from the character's previous history in Civil War, but again, I'm willing to go along for the ride here because I really like this character. Now, in this scene, we learn that Bucky's little amends booklet that he's carrying around is actually the little book that Cap had originally written down his pop culture list that he'd missed while he was frozen, and I cannot believe that I missed this. I am very sorry, you guys, that I did not catch this the first time. That is incorrigible of me. We also get some honestly compelling dialogue from Zemo here, where he chides the two Avengers for viewing Cap as this icon and as this god and as the savior, when in reality, he was still only a man, echoing his sentiment from Civil War when he came face-to-face with Rogers at the crux of that movie. Now, I love Cap just as much as anyone else. Don't get me wrong. But I must admit, it was a refreshing take to be reminded that all heroes, beloved and accomplished as they may be, still have flaws and still make mistakes. Zemo may only see the heroes for their flaws, but I think it's a valid point. Think about how many villains Tony created in his run as a hero. I'm just saying. Maybe dude's right a little bit. I also briefly just want to mention here that being the cheeky little bastard that he is, Zemo is the only character who I can think of who refers to Bucky regularly as James.
Presents two truths and a lie. 1. Geico could help you save 15% or more on car insurance. 2. The first cheesemakers were entrepreneurial.
Not Bucky, not Buck, not Sergeant Barnes. James, which I think is funny because he's always trying to get under someone's skin. And we briefly visit that GRC camp that I mentioned before, and we see that a relative of Carly's is dying or something like that. Look, to be honest, you guys, I haven't really dwelled on Carly all that much in prior episodes because I really just find her to be a meh villain. Her motives here just seem a little flat, and the ground seems to have already been trodden. Like, I'm just not, okay, yeah. She's the villain, she's a super soldier, they're trying to make, there's no appeal to me here. Especially, I really shouldn't be comparing apples to oranges here, but it was cool to see a new class of power and a new kind of villainous character in Agatha and WandaVision. I don't want to compare the two shows because they're very different, but this just kind of seems a little boring to me. The intrigue, to me at least, lies with the chase going on around Carly and the people pursuing her, rather than Carly herself. If you agree or you disagree, please feel free to battle it out in the comments. I'm always interested to hear your guys' opinions. We land and get perhaps what is my favorite line of dialogue of 2021 so far. Only an American would think a well-dressed black man looks like a pimp. That's great. No commentary from me needed. I'm just gonna leave that quote right there. Our next location is Madripoor, and this is a hugely important comic location, guys. Like, this is big now. We're hitting the big time with this one. If you're not an avid comic book reader or a Marvel nerd, I'll forgive you if this Easter egg went soaring miles into the stratosphere over your head, but it is big and it does merit some analysis. All right, it has potentially big implications for the future of the MCU because the location specifically has complex ties to the X-Men. Wolverine specifically being used as a location in various issues, including the New Mutants number 32, the 1988 Wolverine solo series, and the Uncanny X-Force number 24, just to name a few. I believe the reveal of its existence is a very deliberately planted seed for the X-Men's future within the MCU, all right? You have to remember, Disney received the legal right to use the X-Men in their movies when they purchased 20th Century Fox a couple of years ago. I don't remember, it was in 2018 or maybe 2019. They have all legal right to use the X-Men. Now it's just a question of when. The city's aesthetic itself was very Blade Runner meets John Wick in my eyes, and the cinematography really sold that kind of dark underbelly crime world. We briefly see the Princess Bar, which again is another comic book Easter egg, this being a specific place where Wolverine's alter ego Patch frequents, before we enter the Screaming Monkey. Now, I just love how, as the Winter Soldier, Bucky has this kind of underworld criminal clout, convincingly masquerading as Zemo's muscle. Like, it was perfect. I thought it was hysterical. It just lends some reality to this little outlaw society that I really liked, especially because people seem to know who the Winter Soldier was/is. They barter for information tracing the super soldier serum with a criminal named Selby before she's taken out by a mystery shooter. It probably was Sharon Carter, but we'll get to her in a sec. A bounty on their heads quickly filters out in a scene that was very reminiscent to the end of John Wick Chapter 2, to me, before the trio encounters Sharon Carter. However, she's really not the same character that we met earlier in the MCU, like, at all. Essentially hung out to dry after stealing Cap's shield back in Civil War in order to help their cause. She's a much more cynical, jaded, negative character now, having been hiding in Madripoor as a U.S. fugitive. Now, I was a little shocked by this kind of, what seems at first to be like a 180-degree character pivot, but honestly, it makes a lot of sense when you stop and think about how she kind of got shafted compared to Cap and Sam, or even Bucky, who's been pardoned for his crimes. It kind of makes sense that she's a little bitter, if you ask me. I love how this whole time in this location, Zemo just seems completely at home and enjoying himself as the bad guy in this situation, whereas Sam and, to a lesser extent, Bucky kind of have their guard up and do not seem comfortable at all times within Madripoor. They track down the alleged scientist responsible for replicating the super soldier serum, one Dr. Wilfred Nagel, and we find out that he was able to successfully clone Erskine's work, nice little Erskine name drop there, by reverse engineering Isaiah's blood, the character that we met in the previous episode. Sharon starts dealing with some more bounty hunters outside, while we learn inside that Nagel was able to create 20 vials of the serum, only 8 of which have been used outright by Carly so far. Zemo, kind of true to his Hydra hunting persona, dispatches Nagel before the lab is blown up, and it's here where we see Zemo finally don his comic classic mask, the mask that I and many others have all been waiting for ever since his first entrance into the MCU. And let me tell you, it's a glorious costume translation and a fantastic scene. We got a nice callback to the car seat gag from Civil War, but now it's reversed. Back in Civil War, it was Bucky asking Sam, can you move your seat up? And Sam's like, no. And now it's the reverse. Sam's like, you're not going to move your seat up. And Bucky's like, no, I'm not. So that was pretty cute. And they escape while Sharon interestingly gets into a different car, seemingly in some position of power or authority. Is she some kind of double agent? What's going on here with Sharon? I see a couple of people. I don't want to go all Mephisto prediction like we did last series breakdown. Could she be the power broker is something I see some people flinging around. I personally am content to just wait and see what she's doing. We catch up with Walker and Hoskins, again, kind of just lukewarm on the trail. And we see that they have had a similar idea to interrogate Zemo, only, too little too late. Bucky and Sam got there first. We get one quick scene on Zemo's plane, and we're given an excellent dichotomy of opposing views here, with Sam seeing how many lives the shield has taken. Wishes that now, instead of donating it to the Smithsonian, that he just destroyed the shield outright. While Bucky, seeing how many lives the shield has saved, holds to his beliefs and vows to take it back from Walker and put it to proper good use. The final scene that we get is the trio hunting their target in Latvia before Bucky peels off to go take a walk. Now, I immediately recognize those little tech beads as Wakandan. I hope you guys did too. Like, I drew that parallel. I was like, okay, something related to Wakanda is about to happen here. The camera pans around to him, to an empty space, back to him, and when it was very executed well cinematographically, and we see that Ao is standing there, having silently entered the scene. One of T'Challa's Dora Milaje, I feel like is the proper terminology. One of his King's Guard that we met originally back in Civil War. The scene complete with Black Panther's signature drum music cue. We assume she's here because after T'Chaka's death, presumably, the nation of Wakanda is none too friendly toward Zemo. Now, I do not want to get my hopes up, and I certainly do not want to get your guys' hopes up. But the first thing I did when I saw this was look up the timeline here. And what I mean specifically is that Falcon and the Winter Soldier started shooting in November of 2019 and wrapped in February of 2020. Chadwick Boseman did not pass away until August of 2020. Now, I'm not saying that I expect him to make some kind of post-mortem performance here. I don't expect that at all, and neither should you. Do not get your hopes up. I'm merely observing the fact that the timeline doesn't make it an impossibility. We know that he was acting right up until the end, all through his treatment and through his sickness, so perhaps there's a fraction of a possibility that he could show up in this show in some capacity. Again, though, do not get your hopes up. I am not trying to fan some kind of weakly propped up fan theory. It's just an observation that I made. If that doesn't turn out to be the case, which it probably won't, okay, I'd still love to see some action from Florence Kasumba's Ao, and her appearance, again, reinforces this universe with some depth and solidity. The episode ends on that absolute zinger of a reveal. And like I said at the beginning of the review, this episode gave me a lot to unpack, or more so at least than the previous two. And I'm thankful for it because it was genuinely entertaining. I'd say this is my favorite episode so far. Both the inclusion and depiction of Madripoor here were fantastic. They're executed very well. And I already love how Zemo is shaping up to become this Loki-type, affable, you hate to love, but love to hate him charisma machine. I look forward to seeing more of him in Episode 4. That's all I got for you, though, guys. Please, if you could give this video a like, share it to your friends, consider subscribing to the channel if you aren't already. It always does me a huge help. Time is your most valuable resource, and I'm always happy you chose to share some of it with me. I'll see you guys next week for Episode 4.